everyone, my name is Paula Piazza and I'm with the Center for Executive Education at the University for Peace in Costa Rica. I'm here at the El Toledo Coffee Farm in Atenas, which is about 1 hour outside of San Jose, and I'm here to learn more about organic coffee farming with Gabriel and his family. And also you'll learn very quickly there's a lot more to it than just organic farming. He has a very unique and complete approach to the coffee production process and a very interesting global perspective. So I hope you enjoy the tour. Let's get started.
So hello everybody, thank you for the visit. Hi Paula, it's an honor to have you here today. So please feel comfortable, feel welcome to the farm. This is a very small coffee plantation that belongs in the family for close to 80 years. So hope that the experience that we have is enough to teach you something. So the idea is that we can go see the plantation, the process, everything we do here. Feel free to ask questions, to see the stuff that we're doing here. I hope in a humble way we can go somewhere. See. As I told you before, the farm is being in the family for a long time. There's a little bit of history behind. We haven't used chemicals now for close to 30 years. So during this 30 years time, we have changed the way of farming. We have learned a new way of farming and we're still learning. So what we're going to show you is something that we've been practicing for a long time. And the best way I can explain what is really happening here is that I don't know it. It's a mess. It's a mix. It's a lot of things that I don't understand as a farmer, but we're trying to, and we're trying to learn. We're trying to practice probably what some people say is a little bit of science in the middle of farming, and trying to learn and understand how we can work with nature, which is one of the reasons why you can see this diversity. It's coffee in the middle of the farm. You can see a lot of the coffee plants, a lot of diversity integrated together, and it's not organized. So it's not like there's a row of mangoes and another one of bananas and another one of jocotes and another one of another thing. In reality, it's more of a jungle idea where everything has its purpose, where the combination of diversity mimics what could happen in a forest. And I'm saying that mimics because it's obviously not a forest. We have a lot of coffee, and coffee is not native from Costa Rica. Coffee is being farmed. It was farmed in a monoculture way. That's kind of the sad story of it. For close to 50 years, we used chemicals on the farm. My dad and his dad, they were using chemicals on the farm until something happened. That something, in a sad way, my dad got sick with chemicals. But in a good way, actually, it wasn't that big of a disease. He was able to recover it after he stopped using the chemicals. So for us, we farm this way to try to avoid what makes us sick. And that's one of the reasons why we want to learn more, and why we are not happy with just keeping this the way it is. We are interested in keep improving in a permanent story. So I hope what we can see here can help you finding some things out. Let's see the farm. So along the way, as probably you can see little by little, our understory coverage, which for us, that's a term that we didn't manage before that much, but that is everything that we can grow under the coffee. Sometimes it's just a weed, something that we don't care much about, but it's got its purpose. All the insects come, they eat the leaves, so they don't have to go and eat the coffee. This is turmeric. It's a plant that the root is actually being known for ages in Indian culinary purposes, and now we are learning about it. We learn it's healthy, it's actually good to have, it's good to take some of that with pepper, by the way. So it's black pepper. So it's and then this is squash, and all along the side you're gonna see more. There's a lot of also trees, a canopy of trees that together they're also functioning the same way. Sometimes with not a specific purpose. sometimes with a functional purpose that we can use right away. But in nature, everything has its purpose. The difference is that sometimes we do understand the purpose, sometimes we don't understand the purpose. So if we keep things that we know and keep things that we don't know, together they do the best according to the nature structure. But if we try to understand everything, it's very difficult. And so for us, we prefer to just go, like you say, probably go with the flow there, try to learn a little bit. The most important thing is that all that diversity and there, we can be healthy just by getting the things that we produce on the farm. We don't have to depend on going to the store to buy a healthy peel, so we can just come to the farm and get what we need. And that is a very different story than being a monoculture coffee farmer. So monoculture is in our hearts and in our understanding as farmers, this is the worst side of farming. It's what is ruining forests, is what is ruining the land, and is what is ruining our health. If we grow in a monoculture way and we mass produce something, that something isn't healthy. So if it's not healthy, we eat that later. So how are we supposed to be healthy if we don't grow things in a healthy way? That's why we are trying to integrate all that together for our own good and also for the people who buy our products, which at the end, we hope you understand that coffee is more than just a bean. Here, we're going to start learning a little bit about everything, and we're going to learn about coffee as well. So let's keep going a little. So as you know, well, coffee, it's our main production. We have 80 years of experience growing it, but that doesn't mean we know coffee in 100%. We're learning about coffee, and the more we learn about it, the more we are impressed to see how much we've been missing. Coffee, as you can see here, is a bush that we first grow from a seed, and that seedling takes about 3 months to germinate first from the seed. Then it moves on into a little plant that takes 2, 3, 4 years to first produce, which is going to depend on the variety and the conditions of the microclimate and a lot of stuff. After you start producing, it comes into the cycles that are based on the weather. If it rains, it's going to make it prepare for blooming. Like right now, all the new parts that are actually growing at the end of it, this is going to be the preparing for blooming for next year. Where you can see the coffee right now, that was the preparing for blooming last year. So the difference is in this way is that this is the harvest we actually see. But from here to here is the future harvest. In the middle of the leaves, the little stems come, little things, the little buds come out there in the middle of the leaves, and that is going to be wakened by the rain. So rain is very important for the blooming time, which here, as we have an established dry season and an established rainy season, we have only one harvest of coffee a year. In some other places where rain isn't as established that way, they have multiple harvests a year. Here, it's only one harvest a year, and it goes depending on where in the elevation we are located. The lower the elevation, the sooner coffee starts ripening, and the higher the elevation, the slower it's ripening. It ripens slower, the higher it is, because of the temperature. Temperature is the key here. So the cooler the temperature, the slower it ripens. So that's why you can go to Sarcero in April and still see coffee picking. And here we don't have coffee already in April. So, okay.
What time of the year do you harvest your coffee?
We harvest usually November, December, January. This year, we're going to start very early in November. And in fact, we have harvested some of the coffee plants already. And if I can tell you a little bit about it, it's mostly related to the weather conditions based on the blooming time. Last year, at the blooming time, it happened way too early. And in our particular farm, in our way of farming, there's a microclimate created that also we've been learning, it helps us contrast a little the quick changes in weather. So instead of us suffering the same way as many other farmers are suffering, that they're having a lot of coffee being picked right now in the middle of these wet conditions, our coffee is still remaining green. Most of it is still green. And that happens because of the microclimate created by trees, shade, underground storage, a lot of moisture preserved by it, a lot of greenery, herbs, and dry leaves that keep the ground more stable. And so all of that creates microclimate conditions that makes the coffee ripening slower. And we didn't know that. That's how can I put it, long-term benefit, long-term benefit of working with the diversity. And now that I mentioned that, there's a problem. Having shade is less light. Why don't farmers like that idea? Less light means less production. That's why corn is grown 100% sun. That's why beans is grown 100% sun. That's why sugarcane 100% sun. Pineapples 100% sun. That's why coffee, if we want to mass produce it, is also mass produced in 100% sun. But it doesn't mean it has to be done that way always. Actually, if we go back in history, many of these products were found in the forest. So they were part of a different climate, and they were adapted to a mass-produced technique. So with agroforestry idea, the conditions of a forest would reduce the production, but it would create long-term benefits. And little by little, we've been able to see that and find that out, and that's why we're still learning. And we learned that it is economically efficient, but that efficiency doesn't come that fast. At the beginning, it's really hard to change from chemicals to organic. So right now, what I can tell you is that this is maybe the long story short. We are happy with organic farming, and we're happy to see all the different conditions and different things that are happening here based on the production and how we can learn that this creates benefits for nature, for the environment, which means our future, which means the future of my daughters, the future of everyone around, the next generations. And that is a very, I don't know how to put it, maybe very fulfilled in heart. It's more like I'm doing the right thing. I'm not just going there for the money. It's also something that helps our future. But there's less production. And how do we convince farmers to do it with less production? That's when this is not just about one thing. It's about multiple things. When the more we can understand all together, the more we can understand the final output. So these are raspberries. Black raspberries. It's a different type, and we grow here. Right now, we don't see fruits, but it's very lovely to go around and find a lot of different kind of fruits too. So even when you're working, don't tell me that you're not feeling how cooler it is right now versus walking in the sun 100%.
Oh my gosh,
so
much cooler.
So imagine if we are working right here now with a cooler environment, like having air conditioning, naturally air conditioning, and at the same time, while we're working, we can find the snacks around, some fruit, some other stuff. Not only that, we can come and have a walk and get these amazing fruits around and enjoy that. So farming is becoming more enjoyable when it is not as boring as monoculture was before. And I'm putting it that way. Don't get me wrong, I don't want to offend people who do it that way because we thought that was the best. We're not open-minded to change that. So we have to learn and try new things. We did monoculture farming and we did produce more coffee, but even health-wise didn't work. Economically wise, now we're working better. So why, if it works better for health and economically speaking as well, why we don't put it together and continue that way? There's some changes that have to be applied everywhere, but part of it is the diversity. The whole world needs everyone else for something. There's not self-sustained communities anymore. There's no self-sustained countries anymore. And just think about only 60, 70 years back in time. There were many areas in the world that were self-sustained. And it's changed very fast. So the way we are living is what makes this change, because we demand things and we go that way. So Part of that it's our consumption. So the more we can diversify the way we consume, the more farming can supply that diversified demand. But if we just want one thing, when farming is going to go that way too. So this is my dad, Gerardo. He is picking coffee. This is the way Costa Ricans pick coffee, with a basket hanging on the hips. We go around getting the red coffee. That's the ripe fruits. So we are picking fruits right now. We're not picking beans, because coffee is not a bean. We are picking fruits. So we're getting those fruits into the baskets, and then we're going to process those fruits into coffee and other products as well. So part of what he's doing is the job that takes over every time during the harvest. Every day we go picking, as you can see, only the red beans, and we skip the green ones. We skip the ones that aren't completely ripening. So those that are unripe and they're changing to orange and a little bit of red color, we try to leave those there. So it's a manual work, it's a manual process. So all of that is done for quality, and at the same time keeping the plant in good shape for next year, because as I was explaining, the future harvest is there. So if we come with a machine and shake it all right now to harvest it, we're going to destroy next year production. So that's why mechanized farming and harvesting, hasn't been done that much yet. In some places I heard it's happening, but they control more details.
And what kind of coffee plant is this? You said it's a different species?
As well, you saw my dad was picking this one and the other ones were green. That's maybe why you asked the question. This is a Criollo variety, which is a very old coffee plant. And the other ones are Caturra, those are Caturra, and these ones over there are Marsellesa. The root of this, if you can if you can visualize how thick this is becoming so thick, this is close to 50 years. So this plant is very, very old. We have changed the way of farming from a monoculture to diversity, and that includes coffee. That means there's many kinds of coffees. Why growing only one type? Because it produces the most? Or because it tastes the best? In reality, nature is not about that. Nature is about diversity. Sometimes people like salty, sometimes they like sweet, sometimes they like different flavors. So we don't know what the best is. That's why nature keeps diversity. So if we keep that diversity in farming, things are going to grow together and create a resilience against pests, a resilience for production. For example, these are all plants that they do well, but sometimes they get some problems. And the way these plants were changed back in time was because they were ripening too early. So they moved to other ones that ripen a little slower for quality purposes, for flavors. But these are plants that are very strong, they resist a lot of problems, and we can continue producing well, you can see this is a 50 years old coffee plant. So things like that have been changed little by little. The other plants that we have, like this one, Caturra, this is also like a 30 years old coffee plant. Maybe you are seeing that this is very small, but in reality it's being pruned. As we trim it down there, the trunk is still thick, but it's been something that we prune every 10 years. So this is Caturra, and this variety suffers of another disease. I don't know if you can see this here. It's a fungus that grows on the leaf. So this fungus affects that coffee plant. This is called Roya. How do chemical farmers treat that? Copper and many other fungicides. How do organic farmers treat that? Copper. Who tells you copper is not a natural chemical? I mean, copper is a natural product to use. Does that mean it's healthy? That's the other question. That's why we don't agree organic farming is always healthy. And that's why what we do here is not just organic farming. What we're trying to do is go beyond those standards and try to let nature do it its way. The only way we can reach that is with diversity. That's why we have a plant that can suffer the problem, a plant that doesn't suffer that problem because we don't get that, and another plant that also doesn't suffer the problem. Because diversity plants, they are genetically different. So this disease is not going to go to the other ones. And that's something that happens in humans too, and something that happens in nature. So if we reproduce only one family and don't change the genetics of that, that's going to get weaker and weaker and weaker. People try to produce more, putting more chemicals, more stuff, more, and the root of the problem didn't start there. The root of the problem is that we are making these genes tired of just reproducing one kind. But if we keep diversity, that is actually going to help a lot. We're seeing that here. And now speaking a little bit about what happens, this problem gets spread also by the wind. So if the wind comes, there's a variety of coffee that is resistant. So it's not going to get this problem. And there's more coffee this way, of this kind, above there. But that is like a barrier for the other kind of coffee. So coffee helps that way. That's that kind of resilience I was talking about, which it works well. And it works in many, many ways. So there's multiple samples we can bring together. So same way, now that we are here, we can focus probably a little bit the ground. Look at right here. Can you zoom in this way here? Look at the microorganism activity right there. I just moved this leaf. It was there. I just move it there. If you can visualize how many little things are there and they're moving, can you see that? All these white worms, or I don't even know what they are. They are part of the diversity. If I go deeper, there's more and more kinds of things. There's a lot of stuff going on. So all this is part of the natural functions of nature. If you heard me well, what we use to kill that disease could be copper or other fungicides. Question: how many types of funguses do we kill using those products?
You got me.
Many. I mean, that is treating funguses. So it's going to try to kill any fungus. So all the fungi that grows over here, all that is going to be, look at this little thing here. Look how funny they are. 2 little funguses right there growing. I don't know if they are toxic or not. What I know is they are functioning well to the ground. And that function is breaking wood structure into food for the coffee. So then we don't have to buy fertilizers. But by treating a disease, I kill this, I destroy the natural function, and then I need fertilizers, and then I need the other things. So one thing leads to the other. In farming, in a monoculture way, one working leads to a problem that has to be fixed with another chemical, and it's like a chain of problems. In this way, what I'm explaining is how nature is so wisely built that everything works together in a multi-harmony. Many structures anywhere, like right there in the middle. You see, right here. That is something that doesn't happen if the grounds are full of chemicals. If the grounds are all destroyed with herbicides and chemicals and stuff. Haga esto tal vez así, de una forma. ¿Y lo haces tú? Porque ya es una experiencia que quiero que la gente la practique.
What is it?
It's not toxic, that's first of all. You're not allergic to anise, are you? Anise? Like anise said and stuff?
Oh, that's really good. It's almost like, what is that? Anise, you said?
Licorice?
Licorice. It's licorice.
So let's not forget, this farm was a monoculture, which means no more than coffee for 50 years time. And that structure was changed to an agroforestry system, to trees, plants, to diversity in the middle of the coffee, which has created a whole different scenario, a whole different microclimate, a microhabitat for birds, for insects, for many things that we don't know.
And did you do that change at the same time you stopped using chemicals?
Not at the same time, but it was the step afterwards. The first story is we stopped using chemicals. My dad got sick with the chemicals. He decided to stop using chemicals. It was so bad economically that we had to find out what to do. Go back to chemicals and get sick again, or try to learn other techniques that could improve that. And so diversity started helping us actually. How? Easy. If you grow only coffee, there's nothing to eat on the farm. So we started growing bananas, jocotes, nances, and many of the things you saw on the path. And we have avocados, we have tangerines, we have sweet lemons, we have a lot of berries, and we have star fruits, and many kind of stuff. All that to feed ourselves, and it gives us also opportunities to sell it in the market. So we have changed from a monoculture to diversity after the change to organic, more of a need. Like organic farming can be done in a monoculture way. It can harm nature as well as it can harm us as well. I remember my dad wearing a mask using an organic product. What kind of organic product is it? This is a healthy organic product to use. If we go back to nature, oil is raw, it's natural. Doesn't mean it's healthy, and we're polluting the environment that way. So it's not the product, it's how it's used, it's how it's manipulated by humans that makes the big difference. So it's not organic or it's not the conventional, because there is a huge difference here. I've seen conventional farmers with a lot of diversity. Conventional farmers that treat nature, their land, the environment better than many that are certified and use that certification just to try to make more money. So honestly, that's why I'm trying to make that difference too. Because organic farming, just by the name organic, doesn't inspire me much. But seeing the reality, there's a lot of farmers who are doing what they're supposed to do in the best way they can. And that doesn't come out there as that is the good farmer and the other farmer. No, in the stores, it's like, oh, chemicals, no chemicals. Oh, these are bad guys.
Yeah.
Right away, that's what we say.
Exactly.
And we don't search.
Mm-hmm.
For me, the answer is not organic, conventional. The answer is not carbon neutral. The answer is not sustainable. For me, the answer is more researching and knowing more where things come from. And the easiest way we can do that is local consumption. Is if I'm interested in food, the easiest way I can eat healthy is growing it myself. So there are simple things, but we move beyond too far away from that route that right now started to think about that is becoming really difficult. And I know maybe it's not something that can be possible for anybody, but I've seen huge, beautiful looking landscapes just for the eyes, and they don't produce one single fruit to anybody. That all that put together is what I'm trying to explain and what we have to learn. So, yep. Okay, so to explain a little bit, the machine is gonna separate the fruit from the seeds, so we can use the seeds later on for coffee, and at the same time, the fruit part can be used for something else. Not now, because it's just the first harvest, and we usually just save the middle harvest to use the fruit for that. For the fruit uses that I'm mentioning is probably coffee tea. I don't know if you've heard of that. The coffee wine, or we can make juices or different things from the fruit of it. Now what we're putting is the amount of water that the machine is using. Right here, you can see some drops of water. This is the amount of water the machine uses. This goes into that, it can be adjusted same way as the pressure to separate the juice of the coffee. First, the skin falls over here, that's going to be the skin. The coffee comes into here, and this removes the juice, so the juice comes in this this little bucket. And then the seeds of coffee come that way, and there's the low-grade coffee in the blue basket. So the machine does it for us. There's a huge difference if we compare this with the regular method of farming, of processing. I don't know if you heard this, but if you drink 1 cup of coffee in a conventional method, you have to be responsible for 100 liters of water that cup of coffee requires to be processed.
Wow.
This machine, made in Colombia, by the way, has changed the use of water in a huge way that only uses like 1 liter of water to process 500 cups of coffee. See, look at the, I don't even know what percentage that could be. It's a huge water saving that way. So, I'm mentioning some things very quickly. Coffee fruit uses. Have you heard of that before?
No, I haven't.
For food, for people, for animals, for a lot of stuff. We make wine here. There's a fruit that can be fermented. There's a fruit that can be used to feed somebody with all the nutrition, with all the sweetness. We can make a lot of stuff with that sweetness. Now, that is being thrown away just because the regular way of processing coffee used so much water to dump that away. And if I have to tell you why, it's because long time ago, humanity stopped caring about food products and we worry about money. We don't want to feed the world. We just want to make money. And water use is being free. We don't get charged for how much water get to be used. If we get that water from a river, pollute rivers with that, all what we want is to make cheaper process, so at the end we can make more money with the coffee production. Here, the water saving came to help us follow the same line of doing things that we learned by farming. So now, as we process coffee in the other way, we're learning. At first, we didn't know what to use that for. But hearing ideas and putting things in practice, we've been learning to use that. So the skin that falls into here can be used for many ways. We can dry it there and use it for making tea, for example. Or if we use that fresh, or the juice, we can use that to make different products, marmalades, jellies, and stuff. And the coffee for coffee. So in this case, less water, more use of things. So it's a very smart machine. It's not new now. The machine is very old, 15 years being on the farm. And since then, we haven't used that much water to process coffee. So it's been great. It's teaching us we didn't know coffee. It's teaching us we were wasting the best of coffee. So you can tell the difference in volume of the coffee and what is wasted. So there is more waste than coffee production. That goes to dry and it loses about 50% weight. After it loses that weight, we peel it and it loses 20% weight again. And then that little green bean has to be roasted and it loses 20% again. And that roasted bean is not the final product people eat because we don't eat coffee beans like peanuts. We actually brew that, which means water goes through that, we throw the grounds away, we end up drinking 0.2%, the most, of what we produce. And all the rest is waste in products that could be used for something or just wasted. So what we've been learning is using this could be more potential for the farm than increasing the production in multiple ways. So in this case, it's preferable even less production, but more efficient use of it. It's a production that could give us multiple products. Tea. Sadly, Costa Ricans don't drink that much tea. It's been difficult to sell tea here. But there is a tea that we can make with the coffee skin. Wine has been something that has been surprising us. We can sell a little bit more of that. And there is a flour. It's nutritional. The problem is that Costa Ricans aren't used to like whole wheat or flours that can be more nutritional. We just want white refined. That's the best. The best for what? Because which is the most nutritional? Isn't that the least processed, the more nutritional? but we want the opposite. We want white flour, white sugar. We want, like sugar, for example, has more calcium. Sugarcane juice has more calcium than milk, but we don't drink sugarcane juice. We put sugar in our coffee.
Yeah.
And all the calcium has been destroyed in the process, so we can have just sugar at the end. We do that with many products. Wonder why? I don't know. I mean, it's just like, this is the way we build the world. Destroying what is being built to make money by destroying. I don't know. It's something that can be changed, but it starts from every one of us trying to do our best. And sometimes the best is just being careful what I eat and what I don't. So if you heard me well, maybe not drinking coffee is one of the best things people can do around the world, because all that destruction happens for no reason.
And that coming from a coffee producer.
Silly me. I don't know. I'm just not that good at marketing my product. But in reality, it can teach the world something. And I hope, that can be, and did I explain it right? I don't know. Is oil the problem, or is the way it's being used? Is sugarcane the problem, or the way it's being used? Mm-hmm. Is flour the problem, or the way it's being used?
Yeah.
Maybe things like that, can be done different. And that's why we don't have to stop living, but live a little differently.
Live more smart.
I don't know. It's a process. So let's put this to dry. The skins can be dry and the seeds can be dry. That one can be processed. In this case, it's going to be discarded for compost. You can tell the bucket that we use is the bucket that we use for composting. But if we're going to use it, we're going to bring a enclosed container and put it all there and use it for the wine or for the tea or for any other product. So the one that has to be dry goes on top, and the drier one goes in the bottom.
To ferment it later?
No, to make it tea.
Make the tea.
See?
And how long does the coffee bean take to dry?
Depends on the sun, of course, in this case, and the moisture, because the moisture content of at the end has to be 11%. So that turns into from 5 to 11 days. If it's cloudy, it never dries, by the way. But so it's actually, and if we use a machine, it can dry in 24 hours. What's the difference? 24 hours with fuels to burn and dry the coffee really fast. By the way, healthy food, the faster you cook it, I guess the more we destroy it at the same time. So the same with the coffee, and we don't only destroy health, we also destroy flavors. So part of it in coffee, at the end, the little bit that we drink has to be good. I guess I'm a coffee drinker, and I know coffee is bad. So if I'm gonna drink coffee, it better be good. I don't know. It's the two evils of me. One way I love it, one way I hate it. The thing is that together we can try to balance it.
Yeah.
We slow dry the coffee, and the machine, as doesn't use water, can control the amount of moisture. You see how they stick to my hands a little? They aren't completely washed. Have you heard of wash process?
No.
Have you heard of honey process?
No.
That's why we don't know when we're drinking good or bad coffee. Because if we want to be responsible, one of the things that we have to research for and look for, it's process that don't involve water in it. You heard me saying how much. So if we want to drink coffee that doesn't use that much water, the names of it are natural process, honey process, yellow honey, red honey, natural. Why? Because it explains that we leave the honey on top of it. So when it dries, it also dries slower. And we cannot dry this in a machine because it's all gonna be evaporated. So in reality, it doesn't change the flavors. And the honey that I'm talking is a new trend in specialty coffee. But it's trend for flavors, not for how good it is for the environment. Because for example, for flavors, all this juice that you saw us tasting, and you tasted too, is very sweet. Where all that sweet goes, right here in drying, a little bit of it is going to go into the coffee that we drink. A little bit of it is going to stay outside and it's going to evaporate. And I mean, but as it stays here, a little bit of that enhance more sweeter coffee flavors. I mean, some sweeter coffee flavors there that are good for some people. Because at the end, the next step is roasting. I mean, the next step after it's dry, after it's fully dry, we have to peel the coffee, and after it's peeled, we have to roast it. When we roast it, we can do light, medium, or dark roast. And depends on the flavors people want, we can choose either one of those. So if we do dark roast, for example, forget about this. You don't get any extra flavor because we burn all of that in the roasting process. But what about environmental differences? They're still there, even though the flavors have changed again in the roasting process. So maybe there's something there to look for in the market. And honestly, many countries, I know that. I know in Nicaragua, and I know a lot of them in Africa where they don't have machines to process coffee, they do these methods. And that coffee goes to a very common coffee house, which means people can buy low prices and drink one of the best treated coffees in the world. But in the end, we don't know that because sometimes some information is missing. And we could do the other way. We can buy fair trade, organic, the best market product in the world. And maybe it's not honey processed. And maybe it uses a lot of water in the process.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just for marketing and not for the reality.
So organic doesn't necessarily mean it's the best for the environment.
Yeah. See. So, yeah, a little bit of back and forth. I don't know how to call that, but that's something
Give
that's
and
happening.
take.
Yeah. So okay, well, here's where we process the coffee fruit part. So we, instead of throwing it away, we get to use it in different forms. One of it is the tea, but mainly, as you can see, it's actually a little small, micro, tiny wine factory, which for us works great. It's giving us an opportunity to get to use our coffee fruit, which is very rich in flavors, tannins, and sweetness, which in many cases we consider should be used instead of thrown away. So the wine process has, I don't know, I'm a coffee farmer, I'm not a wine producer, but apparently I am both in some ways. So grapes are meant to grow and produce wine. This has been the history. Coffee is different, but very similar to a grape as well. It's sweet, it's got the skin, it's red, so we can get to use the fruit part as grapes. And if we use the skin, for example, we can make red wine. If we don't use it, we can even get clear wines, like white wines, different styles. And we are experimenting still. We have about 4 years that we started already working more in a bigger scale, bigger for us, and we're still learning. Right now, we have a processing plant where the magic happens. Now with this little factory, we have the permits that we need to sell it, so we can continue experimenting at the same time that we find sponsors around the world that want to try that new product and help us with the succeed. I don't know. It's interesting because people try it. They say they like it. Some people say they don't like it, but most people agree that it is a very unique thing that should be done more. So we're sure that the more we can experiment on it, and maybe in the future more people can get more advanced in this process. So the wine happens in a long process, starting from the harvest time. We process, get fruit, use it. We do the must, where the sugar is actually eaten by the yeast, and that produces the alcohol that is in the wine. So, and then there's the clarification process, and then it stays there, and there's the aging process and the bottling. All happen here in different little stages. What is going to happen here is that the process of making coffee is not as simple as it looks sometimes. It can be done in the simpler way. It can be done, maybe my grandma did this, my mom's done this, but we can still improve some of the techniques. Like right now, I'm not making coffee. Right now, I'm using the hotter water as possible, which coffee is not supposed to be brewed with boiling water. This is boiling water, just for cleaning the filter. Because the filter is the very important tool. If it's this fabric, it holds a little bit of residues of flavors from the last time we made coffee. Can you see the color of the water? Yeah. It doesn't taste good. What happened? Seeing that, people are like, no, I prefer a white paper. And what makes a white paper white? Bleach. And then we drink bleach because we want it to not look bad. But then maybe it's not as healthy. We could go in a stainless steel filter. And then people are like, oh, it's not as fine, it goes through. So all this is extracted from the filter. So now we have sanitized filters at the same time that the pitchers are warm up, and we don't drink the old coffee flavors that stay in that filter. So instead of using something like that. Now let's grind it. Why grinding? If we ground coffee, because we know we're gonna make coffee, but it stays ground more than 2 minutes, all the oxygen is gonna oxidize that and it's gonna go into the air. And then when we make coffee, it's not as tasty anymore. Because when it's whole, the beans are protected themselves, they are there. When we grind it, all the little particles get exposed to the oxygen. So the less time we spend from grinding to brewing, the better the coffee. That's why I recommend whole bean. So, claro. What happens in the roasting changes the flavors, but not necessarily to the way that we think. It changes from what coffee is to what roasting is. So coffee is something that was a complex thing from growing, microclimate, the ground, the weather, the environment. And then we take that into roasting. So when we delicate roast with less heat, light roast, the flavors are preserved the best way they can from that area, from that region. But if we get that coffee and do a heavily roasted, then that good quality coffee can taste as good as bad coffee, or as bad, I don't know. It's just a way of explaining that light roast is more delicate, but at the same time give me more of the real differences. Light roast give me the uniqueness. High altitude coffee, low altitude coffee, what is better? In coffee, in tasting, there is not something as better. It's just different. So for what is better for me is the worst for somebody else. So I recommend follow what you are interested, follow what you like, what you personally like, but understand roasting with that different concept, so you can choose what is right for you, and understand brewing also with in a different form. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today and coming to see the little place we have. It's a place that we make a living, but it's also for you. If you drink our coffee or any of the products that we have here. So thank you, and hope to see you not here probably, but doing the things that we all should do to improve our lives. in the little way that we are doing here, seeking for our problems, seeking for what I'm doing wrong, not for what the world is doing wrong, because we can't fix the world. So it's good to have that idea. It's good to know what is happening. It's good to be aware of the world's problems, but it is better to know what I'm doing wrong so I can fix it. So I challenge you to do that. Let's find out what is actually good for all of us to improve. And as coffee farmers, you heard the story, we challenge you to not drink coffee. Thank you very much for everything.
Thanks so much for joining us today, guys. I know that I learned a lot. There's a lot to think about after everything that Gabrielle took us through. So big shout out to Gabrielle. Thank you so much for your time today. And thanks for joining us.